Welcome to B2B Sales Trends, the podcast dedicated to sales leaders in the B2B space, where we share conversations about innovative and successful sales transformations to keep you up to date on the latest trends. This podcast is brought to you by Global Performance Group.
Welcome to our latest episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast, my lovely people. The show that brings you hacks, tips, thought leadership to the topic of B2B selling. My name is Harry Kendlbacher, and today I have the pleasure of having a very special guest on our episode, which is Andrew Kodner, the VP of RevOps and Enablement at Bazaarvoice. I hope I pronounced that very well. Welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast, Andy.
Hey, Harry, thanks for having me. Yes, it's Bazaarvoice, like bazaar, like a shopping bazaar.
Fabulous. Then give us a quick introduction to kick this off with about yourself, about Bazaarvoice, and your role. That will be fabulous.
Yeah. So I've been working in what's now revenue operations for a couple decades. And it happened a bit accidentally. Originally it was, hey, do you want a job in sales operations? I was a sales rep and it seemed interesting, and I was looking to make a change. And I was working full funnel from very early stage lead all the way on through to post booking and working on reducing churn and keeping customers happy. Well, these days, that entire spectrum is marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops. It's RevOps. So really looking for ways every single day to help the sellers get to better outcomes. And that means supporting their leaders, especially, get more done with less, introduce automation, make it easier to do their job. Administrative hassles really get in the way and take a bit of an emotional toll too, with people being happy and being able to drive more business. So helping them see ways where they can get more done, grow in their careers, and the outcome is driving the business. That is what we do in RevOps. This is a supporting role. If you're looking to see your name at the top of the credits in the movie, you've not come to the right place. We all have a little extra popcorn and soda and have to hang out for 5 minutes afterwards.
I love that. Love it. And we talked previously about the role of sales managers in that process. And I want to talk a little bit about, what makes a great sales manager today. And obviously they play a huge role in how strategy gets executed. But the role has changed a lot, over the years. In your view, what separates an average manager from a great one in nowadays sales environment?
Yeah. Look, it's a hard job and it doesn't get a lot of the visibility, I think, that it needs sometimes. I think everybody talks about, add more sellers, add more reps, add more customer success people, arm them with the tools. And the great managers are those that understand that it's a different career path. It's not logical at all times. It can be. Some great sellers can be great managers, but I've also seen some mediocre sellers become incredible managers and vice versa. And I think these days it comes down to looking at repeatable process and trusting that framework over and over, backed by numbers versus gut feel. Now, do I mean that managers shouldn't use judgment, that we're never asking them to use their experience to draw on? No, of course not. We're all still human beings, at least until AI gets to that point. And I think that, you'll hear sometimes this art and science. It is true to an extent for things like forecasting, sure, because you have to draw on your experience. A good manager knows which players have to be involved. They know if the deal is really qualified. They know if the right people have been involved at the account. However, and this is the big thing for me, I've seen comparing different managers, those that are successful and those that are really successful, actually great managers. And for me, those that follow a repeatable process, they prepare before their one-on-ones with reps. They don't just show up and have the rep talk. They have some questions. They've used the tools around them to look at the reporting and dashboards that RevOps has built. They'll use applications They'll come with specific questions to help qualify deals out of the funnel early. That's where their expertise really comes in. And then in the pipeline, making sure that the progression is there. They don't have stalled deals. It's about using that framework consistently across your reps.
Right. Right. It's interesting, the coaching behavior has changed as well as sales behavior. Quite right. So because buying behavior has changed, right? And what I find a lot is that coaching means different things to different people, and I'm sometimes surprised by what I hear. And obviously, you mentioned a couple of these behaviors or approaches already. But can you sort of outline, what good coaching actually looks like when it comes to, helping a sales rep shift his or her behavior or approach? What does good coaching look like in a nutshell, in a very simple way to understand?
Coaching is more important than ever to me because, there are plenty of good applications out there where a rep can look, they can use AI. And is that coaching? Yeah, to an extent. But the human coaching based on experience, to me, it's about the manager as coach or the senior leader as coach walking the walk, meaning the impact they want the rep to have is building and qualifying a good, solid pipeline so that they're able to move deals through and get them booked on time for the amount they said and to reduce churn. So the coaching for me is all about really understanding and taking the time to probe to make sure you're able to assist the rep, guide the rep. And one, really build that trust. The rep needs to be receptive to coaching. Not everybody is. And that in some cases means you might not have the right person in the rep role. But assuming they're receptive, serving up tidbits they can digest at the right time and serving them up in the proper way, not just saying, go do this. Coaching is, hey, have you considered this? I heard, one of your peers did this and it seemed pretty effective. Or, hey, I noticed last time you did this, you really got a great response. And it's showing the rep that they care about what it is. So it's not just inspect what you expect. It's, for example, things like gong conversational intelligence. It's going in advance of that one-on-one that I mentioned earlier, doing some preparation, knowing about their deals a little bit in advance, make suggestions on things you think are going to be better. And the most important piece is follow up. And if there's a report or a dashboard that you're going to be referring to as a leader, make sure the rep knows that. And make sure both of you are using it. Show them as a leader you're using it. Show them as a leader and a coach that you're using the latest language. You've gone to the enablement and you expect them to do it as well. Those sorts of things are there to help them drive more business. And you can coach them there by setting that example. Walk that walk.
Right. You mentioned an interesting part here that I want to dig a little bit into, to say, coaching is obviously a good tool and so forth, but assuming that the rep is receptive.
Yeah.
Now, what should we do if the rep isn't receptive, or what's the how do we deal with that?
Sure. Look, you can coach a rep to exhibit X behavior. So say you're an application you want them to use because it's brand new. Say there is new messaging you want them to use because it's brand new. Real stories. I'm dealing with these things every day generally.
Yeah. So
I think it's one thing to say that, but it's not really the outcome that you care about. You don't really care if they're using the application. You don't really care if they're using the latest messaging. You care about their pipeline generation. Is the volume there? Are their conversions going up? Are they booking enough business? Is their retention sound? Well, those things come from those initial behaviors. So I believe that if the manager arms themselves with data, you go to the rep and you say, hey, I'm observing some things, and we're looking at everyone across this. We're not micromanaging you, but we're looking across this. We believe these things will help increase your odds of success. And this is the direction that we've chosen as a company to go in. And you try to solicit and gain their buy-in. Again, if you've got a good relationship, you make sure that they're bought into the concept, and then you show them that you mean it. Again, be consistent. I think that's a pitfall a lot of managers fall into. There's no emotion involved in this. So remove the emotion and say, there's a reason why we're talking about these things, because we've seen this person and this person succeed. Product marketing believes in this. Sales leadership and leadership from the company believe in this. And if you bring those things together and point to them, okay, and then it takes a bit of time. You've got to be able to point back to that data. Again, remove that emotion and say, hey, look, the things aren't happening that we're looking for. And at some point, you might have to make a change in that person. If they refuse to generate their own pipeline, that's a problem. If you say it's everyone's job, you do have to hold them to it.
Right. Absolutely. And it's an interesting challenge to sort of balance coaching with the pressure of performing that sales managers have, right? And there's always pressure to hit short-term goals, and everybody understands that. So how do you think can leaders sort of help managers to stay focused on developing their teams, even when it's tempting to jump into taking control of a deal? Because that's a lot of the times the issue out there.
Yeah. Every single call between a leader and a manager can't be about pipeline and deals.
Right.
That's just a fact. They have to be separated. Pipeline and forecast calls arguably should be separated. And then the calls about the team. Even if you can't have a separate call, I think the leader with the manager, the frontline manager, I think it's best to at least have a portion of the call where you say, hey, let's switch gears, really compartmentalize it. And I think it really requires some time to talk about professional development, who's doing well, really doing an assessment. And the company I'm with today, Bazaarvoice, AWS prior to that, RingCentral prior to that, and others, I think companies do a decent job at trying to decide how much potential does someone have as a first-line manager, and then how they're performing. Because sometimes someone might have really high potential, but they're not performing that well. Or maybe they're performing pretty decently, but they're not going to get much higher than that. I think it's important that you make sure that you resist that temptation as a senior leader to always go to deals and always have that day-to-day or that monthly or quarterly pressure. It requires, I think, talking about the team, talking about how you're going to market, getting the manager involved. Hey, do you feel like the territories are supporting the reps in an equitable way? Does everyone have the opportunity to make their numbers? If not, hey, let's go talk to RevOps. Have you talked to RevOps? Hey, do you have the information that you need to be able to steer the team and course correct? Hey, how is that new messaging landing anyway? Is there anyone else we need to talk to and get that feedback flywheel going? I think the first line manager will sense and see that the leader cares about more than just the number, because if they prove those other things are truly important, the number will come. It is true. So if you ask them to spend time on the right things, they will execute. If it's only about the execution, though, how they get there at all costs, it's not sustainable. Sooner or later, they'll miss their number because they don't have that platform underneath them doing the right things.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, we talk quite a bit about the coaching side of things, and tomorrow I'm actually hosting a roundtable that where the discussion is how do we increase win rates, and what do salespeople really need to be doing differently to drive higher win rates, and
Yeah.
When you think about the current environment, let's shift here a little bit to sales and sales behavior and so forth. When you think about the current environment, there's a few stats out there. 80-ish% of decisions have stalled in the last 12 months. Selling is clearly not just about proving or providing value anymore. It's really also about sort of helping and leading the buyers to a place where they feel confident in how they buy, right? What can sales teams, in your opinion, do better to support those buyer experiences throughout the process and give the buyer more confidence in their decision?
I can really speak from the heart on this one because I've been a buyer now a lot longer than I've been a seller.
Right.
You get, as a revenue operations leader or go-to-market ops leader, even as sales ops or marketing ops leader, you get an awful lot of inbound email. We're part of that. We're the contact in that ICP,
Right.
that ideal customer profile. And the name of the game these days, for a long time, it was, as a seller, if you can prove the ROI with hard dollars and say, if you do the following, you will get this over this time frame. That's no longer enough. It used to also be if they could demonstrate and show the business case around value. What business problems will this help you solve, Mr. Buyer? And we will prove that to you. Mm-hmm. And if they do, somebody should purchase. Okay, sounds great. However, it used to be that if they could prove those things, the buyer would be comfortable enough to go to whatever funding source, whether or not they have the purchase authority or not, state the case, get the money, work on the implementation. Okay. The change, I think, over the past few years that's been such a big deal from a buying perspective is managing risk for that buyer. And the difference is this. All those other things are great, and they are still very important. Functionality too, let's not forget that. However, these days, I think being able to really vet what the experience is going to be like once you make that purchase. What's the implementation like? Who has to be involved? How many people? What sorts of activities do they have to perform? What will our renewal process be like a year from now? What happens if something isn't going well? How will we measure together, buyer and seller? How will we measure once we go live and then over time, how things are going? Adoption. Has it been effective? Because for someone like myself, you really have to be able to assess that risk in the sales cycle. And if you don't see a way to mitigate as much of that risk as possible, you can never remove all of it. Fair. But to make a comfortable decision that you can stand behind so that, one, it doesn't put you on the hot seat or in jeopardy at some point down the road for making a bad decision, I think you need as much insurance as you can get with mutual action plans and commitments from that seller to understand that experience as far into the future as you can. Does the rep disappear and you just go to a CSM forever, or can you call the rep now and then? What's the relationship with the customer success person going to be like? If you don't understand how they're going to measure your success, you're adding risk. If you don't understand use cases from other customers, what's their experience been like, you're adding to the risk. All these things I'm talking about extend sales cycles. They just do. But I would suggest they're really important. We have to manage that risk as buyers, and sellers have to do a really, really exceptional job these days of painting that picture.
It's tough, isn't it?
It is.
Right.
All around.
Right. Great insights. You mentioned a couple of data and tools and things that you're using or you've used in the past. I always have a little bit. There's great tools out there. For me, it's always important. How are people using the greatest tool without a great usage is worth nothing, in my opinion. So,
yep.
How do you turn really insights into actions here? So the data and the tools are really, they're like everywhere, right? And often buyers have to sort of see through that jungle of, what is it actually that's working for me? But, they don't, these tools and the data doesn't automatically lead to better results. What have you seen work when it comes to actually turning insights into action on the ground here?
I think there are a few different critical points, and it's cloudy out there to figure some of this out because of the messaging that we're all getting in the market.
Right.
Sorry, This is not controversial. It is a fact. AI is not taking our jobs in the next 20 minutes. It's just not happening. It is not there yet. It doesn't do those things. It is a bit of a commodity where things are shaking out. We'll see what happens in the future, but today it's an interesting perspective. I think to turn that data insight into, what are we looking for? An action. That's what we really need. That's what we're trying to do. It's not the insight, that's the outcome. It's giving someone an insight, say, oh, and then what behavior are they going to change? What are they going to go do from that information? And I think that there's no shortage of information out there. So the best leaders are those that are able to take that data and they're able to work with people like their RevOps business partner, if they have one, if that's the model. They can work with their marketing operations person. They can work with their own leaders, is to say, well, what's this data telling me? That's really the bottom line. It's not the data. It's what's the trend? What have we seen? And it's comparing the trend. It's comparing historicals over time. And it's as much as you can saying, well, what happened last time? Now, if you're a brand new company or a fairly new company, you don't have that to draw on. So that makes it difficult. But really work with people to find those patterns. Now, things like AI apps and tools surface some of that to make it more easily accessible. I'm all for that. I think it's wonderful. The ability to give you scenarios and summarize what it is seeing in the data. And by the way, I always like to ask it more than once. I'll ask it over time. I'll ask today, I'll ask tomorrow. You can, your mileage may vary, as they say. You can get different answers. But I think it's important to get that summarized data and then get a human's eyes on it too. Your RevOps person, yourself, if it's something you've worked on. You have to make sure the data is also in a format that's easy to take in and digest. You can't have lots of different reports and dashboards served up in different ways. It's too hard to take stock of what you're looking at. So familiarity, easy to understand layout. Spend your time digesting and thinking about the data instead of understanding how to take it in the first place. I would say the best leaders use the data as a starting point to ask more questions. That's the point with data. Data doesn't always give you the answer, but it'll tell you where to go look. It's the treasure map. It tells you where to go dig. What does this really mean? And if it means something different than you thought, you have to make the very human decision on, well, what will I do differently, if anything, because of this insight I got from the data? Everybody is always talking about, bring me more insights. I don't need more data. And it's pausing for a moment, regardless of how busy things are, regardless of what role you're in, to say, so what? What am I really looking at here? What does this mean? And if it means something significant, would I change what I'm doing today because of it? I think that's really the important piece when people are talking about cutting through all of this data out there. A lot of the people I follow on LinkedIn has evolved in some interesting ways these days, but yeah, the Jeff Ignacios, the Jeff Russetts, the Sid Kumars, the Sangram Baharis, there's some great insight out there. And the one thing I love that people are saying now is that, use these following 8 steps in AI. Right. Life will be good. Okay. These guys don't say that. They say, yes, and show me. Show me. I really need proof that these things are there. Right. And that's made all the difference for me.
Right. It's interesting. I think people slowly but surely have come to a realization that, AI alone cannot fix everything that's wrong within sales. And it's been seen as the greatest savior of the sales or the B2B sales sort of industry and behaviors. It's just not the case. It enhances some aspects of the sales process. I would even argue right now to say that the human element of the sales conversation is even more important than ever at the moment. And as long as we use AI and data in a really, really smart way to support that, that's where the sweet spot is, in my opinion. And do you agree with that?
Yeah, Harry, I think any application, I believe it's been this way for a long time, depending on the subject of the day.
Right.
AI and leveraging different apps and tools that have an AI component, which is more or less everything, can be a huge distraction.
Right.
And I think because the time is so much more precious than it's been, I mean, arguably it's always been, but what we talked about earlier, it takes a lot more work to get a sales cycle moving ahead. So you better use your time wisely. Well, you can really distract yourself by spending a ton of extra time in apps and tools.
Right.
You should be spending less time. So do I believe in the power of a new leader starting and using something like Gong to look at call summaries and email summaries to get up to speed? It's amazing.
Right.
So much better.
Right.
When you go to the rep to ask them what's going on in those accounts, you already have questions. Absolutely. Right. That's great. But it's spend an appropriate amount of time and apply your human experience and judgment really makes a difference. Otherwise, you can really spend time on the wrong things. And what does that mean? Wrong outcomes. You're not going to get enough business done. You're not going to build enough pipe. Activity alone does not take care of those things.
Right. Andy, we're almost out of time. And my last question in every podcast is the following. We talked about the human experience, the human part of the conversation that is so critical nowadays, and the fact that salespeople really need to be at an elite level, right? What, in your opinion, are the top 3 qualities that elite salespeople, considering nowadays tough buying environment, right? What are those top 3 qualities that you believe elite salespeople need to possess and execute?
It's a really important question. I think seeing a lot, I don't know, probably, I guess thousands of reps over the years. I would say the first one is their ability to observe. Really pay attention to everything around them. What is their manager asking? What is the company asking of them? What are they running into in their interactions with the customer? What are they hearing from their peers? Really observing all of those things. And then number 2, listen. So what are those observations telling you? What should you do to make each item your own? Because what works for the rep next to you,
right?
And if you're in an office, might not work exactly for you. How do you make that your own? No, I'm not suggesting you go rogue and wholesale. Don't do those things as a seller, but really listen to those items that are out there and make them your own so that you're able to execute effectively. Measure yourself. Now, number 3, I think is huge. It's commit and hold yourself accountable. It's, okay, I have these tools around me. I'm receptive to the enablement and the information. I'm receptive and open to the coaching from my leaders. I'm going to commit to these things. Even if I don't always agree, I'm going to commit to trying all of them and giving them a fair shake, and then measuring myself and holding myself accountable. Okay, I went to this e-learning course. Great. You check that box. But are you really holding yourself accountable? Did you pay attention? Did you really take the time to say, okay, I know what I need to say to the customer? Did you really try it out in front of multiple customers? So honesty and self-accountability, I think, are really crucial, because when that happens, I believe the best reps do this unconsciously. They succeed no matter what state the product is in, no matter what their manager or their support system is like. They find a way because they're really resilient. So they commit and they move ahead and they hold themselves accountable.
Love it. The ability to absorb, the ability to listen, and they commit and hold themselves accountable. I love it, Andy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I know our listeners very much appreciate your insights and your thought leadership. So, Andy, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you again for having me, Harry. It was really a blast.
My lovely people, 2 calls to action for you. Go to the B2B Sales Trends.com site to view this episode or any previous episodes, share it, subscribe to it, also to our B2B Sales Trends podcast YouTube channel. Until the next episode, look after yourselves, look after your loved ones, and of course, your B2B customers. Bye-bye.